What's going on, guys? Simple Sports back again, another episode. And today, I want to revisit the NCAA stuff really quick after I've had some time to sort of let it settle, hear what other people have to think and say, read up a little bit on some things, stuff like that. And not to mention, it's just kind of a slow news period with the end of the NBA season rolling around, NCAA tournament. It's getting underway. Conference tournaments anyway. NCAA tournament will be soon. No NFL news other than a couple of contracts and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk about the whole the NCAA and how you fix all that good stuff. So let it be known. I'm no business expert. I'm no analyst even. I'm simply a guy. I'm just a fan. So take what I say with a grain of salt, but I do have what I think is an idea or at least a start. Okay. So as I said, money wise, like I don't know how you fix the NCAA. I will say personally, I do feel players should be compensated in some form, in addition to scholarships. How you do it, in a fair and reasonable way, I have no idea. But I think the bottom line is players need to be compensated in some fashion, whether it be just outright paying all the players, letting other companies come in and sponsor players, maybe as Colin Cowherd suggests, sort of writing them a check at the end of their tenure at the school, whatever the case may be. But I think it is a point that we need to get to where the players are compensated in some fashion. And my big thing is, the reason I think that's fair is because I think the market would take care of itself. I think there's a lot of pushback on how it's going to affect maybe recruiting and certain players, and how is it going to affect the NBA and all of these things. Who should get what money, and well, what if you don't pay this guy and that guy, or what about the smaller sports, all sorts of stuff, right? I think the market will take care of itself, just like it does in, I guess, the standard or everyday person's workforce. You are worth what someone is willing to pay. And that goes from buying a product to employment to whatever the case may be. You're only worth what someone's going to pay. And you can charge $1 million, but if it's only worth $750, it's worth $750. If someone's only going to pay you $750, if that's the only offer you get, it's worth $750. Period. It is what it is. And so the players that are of a higher ilk will get paid in such fashion, and the players that aren't won't. But again, I'm no finance expert. We'll see what comes of all of this stuff over the next days and months and weeks and years. But I think players do need to be compensated. But right now, what we have is a black market in the NCAA with numerous student athletes who are well aware they are worth more than they are receiving, which at the moment is nothing or very little in terms of compensation. And if that is the case, in that, not just in NCAA, but in any, I guess in any aspect, right? When you feel like you are not getting what you deserve, you are going to A, fight for what you deserve, or B, take what you feel you deserve, which is what is happening. And it's always going to happen. The players will always circumvent the rules. The NCAA coaches, whether it be boosters, coaches, whoever is giving out the money, they will always circumvent the rules to achieve their value. And whether that be through coaches, through companies, through agents even, it is what it is, and that's the way it's going to be until it changes. And paying players, I mean, listen, it could drastically change recruiting in terms of the process and the procedures. Rather than being about basketball, it's about money, and that could be an issue. Maybe no longer are you recruiting a certain player because you think they are really good, but instead, you're going to recruit. That's the reason you're going to recruit them. But your recruiting pitch, I should say, maybe not necessarily is basketball, but it's instead money related. Instead of saying, "Hey, Marvin Bagley, we know you're really good. Why don't you come to Duke and we'll give you $5 million or $3 million, whatever the case, whatever the number would be." It could change in that manner. And you may have certain companies that push you to different schools based on maybe their school wears Nike. Nike wants you to go to a particular school, and maybe they sort of funnel you in that direction. Or maybe they promise certain things. Maybe there's a certain school that has a exceedingly rich program in terms of money, or maybe the coach gets paid a lot, and maybe he says, hey, if you sign here, I'll guarantee you X amount of dollars. And maybe that sways a Duke commit to UNC, or a UNC commit to Michigan State, or whoever the school is, doesn't matter. But the point being, rather than being about playing basketball, it's about money. And that could be an issue. But again, I'm no finance expert. All of those things, all of the minute details can be worked out and thought about by someone who's a lot smarter than I am. But my thing is, so what? That happens already. Okay. The biggest and best schools typically get the biggest and best players 9 times out of 10. You have your one-offs of players who go to smaller schools. But I mean, if you look at the recruiting now, who gets the best players? Duke, UNC, Michigan State, Kentucky, UConn, Villanova, Louisville, and so forth and so on. I mean, you look at all the top. If you pick out the top 10 to 15 colleges in terms of basketball, they get the best players. And then every now and then you get a guy like Ben Simmons who goes to LSU, or CJ McCollum who goes to, I think he went to Lehigh. Hassan Whiteside, where did he go to school? I don't know why it's escaping me right now. But they went to smaller schools and now in the NBA are successful players. And so you have those one-offs that go to the smaller schools, but by and large, they are being drafted it's like a farm out of those top 10 to 15 schools. And that part won't change no matter what, because they are the best schools and people want the best circumstances, the best opportunity available to them. But I want to set money aside for a second and just talk about the actual process of going from I want to play basketball, you're in high school, to the NBA, right? And to me, it's simple. I think it should be 100% allowed. I think you should be able to go from the NBA, from the high school to NBA. I think it is up to NBA team scouting departments to do their jobs. I mean, they're not obligated to draft an 18-year-old. It's not like they have to. And sure, you have the possibility of someone you're not 100% sold on, at least not drafting, say, 1 overall as an 18-year-old straight out of high school, but you feel like, hey, maybe with a year or two under his belt, might do well in college, and you may not want to pass on him. You're going to have that predicament, but by and large, you're not obligated to, right? And if you fail, it is on you. It is on your scouting department. If you get an 18-year-old that's a total bust for whether it be off the court or on the court issues, a lot of times that's your fault. Sometimes, listen, a lot of those things are out of your control. But if you draft an 18-year-old, 9 times out of 10, you're going to get an 18-year-old. And you have to be ready to deal with that. So that drafting them is on you. But you can if you want. And if the 18-year-old, I think, should be allowed to enter the workforce, because you can in any other field on the planet, right? Well, I shouldn't say on the planet. I don't know how other countries work. But here in the U.S., you can enter the workforce as early as 14, 15 with parent permissions. But let's just say 16 and up, you can get a job. 18 and up, you're an adult. You can definitely get a job. And there's no limitation as far as, well, you're only 18, so we're not going to pay you, but you can still do the work for us. No, it doesn't work that way. They either want to hire you or they don't, and they know that you're 18, so they know the risk that could be involved. And I mean, there's a barrier there. I don't know why there's a barrier there, but I think we know why, but it is what it is. I don't know. I think you should certainly be allowed to enter the NBA at 18. If you can go get another job, then you should be able to go into the NBA. And again, it's up to you to determine your success, and it's up to the franchise to determine if you're going to be successful, or at least to attempt to be helpful in that process. That's their job as well. It's not their job solely to just draft you, throw you on the court, and just say he either swims or sinks. It's got to be deeper than that. But I think the biggest thing overall is just giving players the option. Straight to the NBA is their decision, right? If they want to go from high school to the NBA, if they think they're ready for it, then go for it. And if they fail, try again or go find another job, just like everyone else does. If I go to a law firm and I don't do well, I don't ever, it's not like I never get to work at a law firm again, barring anything extreme. If I just simply fail at my job, I'm not going to be banned from, getting another job. It's not like it's the end of the world. If you go into the NBA draft and you're not successful, even in the basketball field, there are other options. Go to the G League, go overseas, go to college. If that's an option, I don't know how that would work. If you elect to go to the NBA draft and you are not drafted, I don't know how that would work in terms of going to college. But point being, you have fallback options just in basketball alone, let alone actually going to get a skill, going to get an education, and getting a job out in the real world, or in the regular world, I should say, with the rest of us. But you should have that option. You can go get some training, some coaching, maybe go to school. But it is on you to make yourself succeed, and it is on the franchise to be sure, or at least to do their due diligence, that someone that they're drafting that's an 18-year-old is going to be successful and has the opportunity to be successful. So I have 3 options. That's option 1. Option 2 would be to go to school, go to college for 2 years minimum. I think if they institute something along those lines where you either can go to the NBA or go to college for 2 years, I think that's a fair enough option. See, if you allow players to accept payment, and this is assuming that happens, right? Assuming, and maybe even not with payment, even if you set a payment aside, but assuming that they have some sort of compensation for the players, if you allow those players to accept payment, it would potentially reduce the stress of the decision to go from the NBA or from high school to the NBA or to college. Like, that decision could be a little bit easier on you because you're like, you know what? I can go to college and still make some money. It may not be NBA money, but I can still make significant money. And also get some training. Go to a good coach, go to a good program, get 2 years of real training, some real experience, grow your body, grow your mind as a player, and then go to the NBA. But if you think you're ready, then you can go straight to the NBA. And you may have a large segment of, I guess, the high school going into college population, as far as players, that may be more accepting of getting more training in terms of going to play in college or play overseas or play in the G League, if they know they're being compensated, as well as a little bit of education. And they'll do that willingly, knowing that it's not the end all be all. It's college and then go to the NBA. And some of those players may not be ready. Markelle Fultz does not appear to have been ready. I mean, Lonzo Ball wasn't ready. It took him 2 months just to learn the speed of the game, let alone all the rest of those things. Imagine Lonzo Ball 2 years from now, having played at UCLA for 2 years, and then going into the draft. Now you have a better idea of what he is, both physically and mentally, and as far as his skill set. And so that decision of, I may not be quite ready, is a little bit easier because you have a fallback option. See, now those players that don't think they might be quite ready, they don't have an option whether you think you're ready or not. It's college, NBA. College for a year, go to the NBA. Because there is no buffer in between. You go from high school student to one and done in the college ranks and then straight into the NBA. And a lot of those guys aren't ready. And I think that's why you see so many busts in the league, or so many star players. I mean, look at over the last couple of years of the amount of star players that there should have been that went top 5 overall. Some of them aren't even in the league. Some of them aren't playing. They might be in the league. Shabazz Napier is one that comes to mind immediately, just because I saw him play last night. I mean, he was all the rave coming out of college, and I honestly forgot he was in the league until last night. So it's, he's another guy, and I don't even remember if he was a one and done. But my point is, you have a lot of those guys. Jahlil Okafor. Either the Sixers have screwed that up royally. He's just not ready for the NBA. Now this is the fourth player that they've had this happen with. Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. Now Ben Simmons was due to injury, but Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz, and Jahlil Okafor. None of which their first year. Nothing. Not to mention having them go to college for 2 years, if they elect that route, reduces the risk, at least potentially reduces the risk of the NBA drafting someone who is not mentally and physically ready, and they know that they aren't. Brandon Ingram, I love him as a Laker, but he could have definitely used another year. Imagine if Brandon Ingram came into the league this year being his rookie season, and he put up the numbers he put up and what people would be saying about him versus him coming into the league last year, averaging 9 points, and people are like, and it's like, oh, he's got to get ready. That makes draft picks almost useless. It's like inflation almost, where you're drafting these guys with the expectation or the hope that 5, 6, 7 years from now they're going to be stars. AD's been in the league for a minute now. 5, 6 years, and he's been to the playoff once, and he got swept. I mean, the NBA draft is, and to be fair, the NBA, as far as drafting young players, is far, far different than the NFL. And I've spoken this before, but it's a lot easier to impact a football team just because there's so many moving parts. Whereas in the NBA, you either have stars or you don't. And some 18, 19, 20-year-old coming into the league off of 1 year, it's really not a star. I mean, you have to be special, right? You have to be real special. Who was the last rookie in the NBA that made a humongous impact? I don't know. I mean, off the top of my head, I have to go all the way back to LeBron, and LeBron didn't even make the playoffs his first year. AD, I mean, listen, a lot of these rookies have good numbers, but what impact are they making at 19 years old who still have to grow up both physically and mentally? I mean, listen, of course, you'll never be able to eliminate everybody in regards as to who is ready and who isn't. You'll never be able to distinguish fully, well, this guy coming out of high school is ready, that guy is not. This guy is ready coming out of college at 2 years, this guy isn't. And even college in 2 years might not be quite enough for some, but at least it's a better starting point as a rookie than coming in as a 19-year-old, having played 30, 35 odd games in college, and not having your man body, not having your physical, as far as girth, strength, weight, not having the mental capacity that you could learn under Coach K for 2 years and actually get some real tutelage. You can learn under Roy Williams for 2 years, John Calipari, Izzo. You can learn under these guys for a long time. Heck, stay 2 or 3 years. And get some real knowledge while your body progresses. Because if you can have a little bit of a jump start mentally when you come to the NBA, the physical part is going to take care of itself just as you grow up as a man. That part will take care of itself, right? So, I mean, and there's plenty of guys in the NBA now that weren't ready after a year. Again, I go back to Ben Simmons, although, again, he was hurt. But Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball early on this year. Jason Tatum now seems to be hitting the rookie wall because he is not used to this. He didn't go and play 82 games in college. And that part you're never going to get right out of the gate. But at least you get sort of the wear and tear of what it's like to go from season to season in college. And I think doing something like option 1 or option 2 would build the health of both the NBA and the NCAA. I mean, if nothing else, you get a more mature player in terms of basketball. You get a more mature player, more experienced player. Maybe you build a team that puts you in the NCAA tournament. Maybe you make the Final Four so you know what it's like to play in a big game. I mean, that's one of the things. That's one of my knocks on someone like Ben Simmons. Like, what are they going to do in the playoffs if they reach a game 7? They didn't go to the tournament. He's never played in a game of that magnitude, right? Lonzo Ball, same sort of scenario. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, like these guys didn't play in the Final Four in the national championship. So what is it going to look like when they get there? I mean, when they make the playoffs this year, and they need a big shot or a big defensive stop late in the game, it's going to be tight, and they haven't been through that yet. So now you get a player who's a little more grown up physically and mentally and is a little more ready for the NBA. And option 3 would be the G League. Now, the G League has its own problems, but for what it's supposed to be, the G League could be another option. So maybe you go to the G League for a year. So you have 3 options. You can go straight to the NBA, you can go to the G League for a year, or you can go to college for 2 years. And again, the G League would sort of have to be fixed and revamped. From what I hear, it's not a very good place as far as developing as a basketball player because everyone's trying to get to the NBA. But if you made it a farm similar to the NCAA versus a relegation point, which it is now, where it's like a bad thing. It's like you go to the G League now, it's like, oh, you got sent to the G League, right? It's sort of like what the Summer League is. The Summer League is a chance for all the young players to come out, get some NBA minutes against some guys who are going to be in the NBA, play on the NBA court, things of that nature. You can do something similar to that with the G League, but it needs some sprucing up for sure, from what I hear at least. And again, all 3 of these, if these were your options, it creates a healthier crop of players to choose from, as well as bringing back the story of basketball, college basketball. Like that's what I mentioned earlier in one of my previous videos, where I've fallen out of love with the story of college basketball because there aren't any. It's all about the schools now. I mean, listen, let me rephrase that. It's always been all about the schools, but you become attached to a certain player because they went to a certain school, right? And it reminds me of, there's a difference between a great college player and a great pro player. And the easy example is to go to college football, right? Think of all the great college quarterbacks that could barely sniff the NFL, right? Tim Tebow, Troy Smith was one of my favorites at Ohio State. As a college quarterback, he was phenomenal. Vince Young was outstanding, one of the best college quarterbacks ever. These guys lasted an hour in the NFL. But you got attached to them at the college level because they were there for 3 years at minimum. And you do the same thing with some of these other players. Like, people talk about Grayson Allen all the time. Well, he's been there for a while. People talked about, I mean, there's a list of players who, Tim Duncan was one of the all-time greats. He went to school for 4 years. It's not out of the realm. And he came into the league as a grown man. He came into the league as an adult. He was a rookie. He was young, but mentally and physically, as a rookie, he was farther along than any other. I mean, he was essentially 4 years ahead of what most rookies are. And it makes the college teams better, right? Because think about this, just in recent history, look at Kentucky. The teams that they could have had. And the one that comes to mind immediately is the John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, and Anthony Davis combo. Think about that trio in college going up against a Duke that might have, Jason Tatum and Brandon Ingram. Like, and maybe even Okafor if Okafor had stayed for another couple years. Like, those are the types of teams that you could be seeing in college basketball, but you don't, because it's just, again, it's a funnel. It's almost a redundant step, because you're forced to go to college, you're forced to sign on this contract, you're forced to play basketball for an organization in NCAA that generates billions of dollars and gives you nothing because it's amateurism. So that's my suggestion, and I mean, it's all just scratching the surface, but I think in general, those are my ideas. Someone else can work out all the minute details and shortcomings that it may have in the future if they want to. But and I mean, I'm sure, much like the current system, there would be some unintended consequences, but it's an idea and it's in a start, and that's what you need. And to quote Gary Parrish, wrote an article on this about 2 weeks ago or so. CBS Sports, Gary Parrish, you can't break amateurism rules if there are no amateurism rules. And it's I just think it's, again, going back to what I said in the beginning, I don't know what the answer is, but I know the point we need to get to. And the point we need to get to is compensating these players. There's no reason for these colleges and the NCAA as a whole to bring in the amount of money that they do and not be able to give these players something other than a scholarship. Because and I get it, a scholarship is a lot, but when you're making money off the backs of these guys, it's criminal to me. They should get something. And not everyone is that good. I mean, you're going to have players that are there for 4 years and they're going to have a great college career, and then they're going to go into the regular workforce just like a lot of the rest of us. And that's the market doing what it does. That's just the way it's going to be. That's not going to change. And if you find that to be unfair, then you're not an adult. People are going to pay you what you're worth. Period. And just because Joe got $3 million to go to Duke and they only gave you $500,000, well, maybe they don't see you in that light. So go prove otherwise. That's the way I look at it anyway. So it is what it is. We'll see what happens. But those are my, I wanted to, because I talked about this 2 or 3 times already, I wanted to sit down with a little more concrete of an idea to present to the table. So that's my 2 cents if anyone wants to take it and run with it. But I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.